Hey, hello, hi there, hi everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever. Good, just good. It's Anne. It's Anne McCarthy. Look, there's Anne. Yeah, look, woo! It's Anne from Automattic. She's here today to chat to us about WordPress 6.3, or in fact anything which might be coming up in the future. We kind of threw this together at the last minute, so we'll see if anybody joins us live. If they do, that'd be great. If not, it'll become a piece of posterity. But Anne, how are you?
I'm doing well. I had coffee and it's only 9 a.m. So the
Oh, I'm
day
so sorry.
day's ahead of me. Yeah.
It's not 9 a.m. here. It's wow, you really are on the other side of the planet. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon here. Anne and I hopefully are going to be both setting off fairly soon for WordCamp Europe. It'd be nice to finally see you. Hopefully, I'll see you. That'd be lovely.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be bouncing around. I'm a little bit introverted, but you'll catch me at some point.
Yeah. You're introvert. Oh, okay. That'll
I
be
know.
interesting. Yeah. So we're going to talk about WordPress 6.3. If you fancy making some comments, please do. Just go for it. If you're on wpbuilds.com/live, you have to be logged into a Google account because we've got YouTube comments. And obviously, if you're on Facebook, that's fine. But you might need to click the little link in the top to let Restream, which is the platform that we use, know what we're doing. But let's crack on with it. The whole point of this podcast, and Anne's on a really strict deadline, so we've got about 40 minutes to go. So we'll just crack straight on with it. The whole premise of this episode of this show is all about a piece that Anne wrote on the 18th of May, which is a very nice day for me. That's my birthday, so I was.
Oh, birthday
I
gift
know,
to you.
I
That's
know, it was ideal. 6.3 roadmap to 6.3, and in that piece, Anne just sort of laid out a load of the different bits and pieces that are coming up in WordPress. And as with all WordPress releases, every time it just seems to get bigger. It felt like this was a really, really big one. We talked about it on the This Week in
Mhm.
WordPress show, and there was just too much really to go into. So the endeavor here was to let Anne talk about what's coming up. If anybody wants to drop in a comment with concerns or thoughts or theories or whatever,
Mhm.
feel free to do that. I'm going to share my screen in a moment with all the different articles and so on. But this piece you can find, it's on make.wordpress.org, and just go search for pieces on the 18th of May 2023 roadmap to 6.3. So I was hoping that Anne wouldn't mind if I clicked around on the screen a little bit and talked about some of the different components that we've got going on, why they've been pushed to 6.3, what it is that they're hoping to achieve, and so on and so forth. So I thought we'd start here, if that's all right, Anne. I'm showing a part of the screen here, which is this sort of like little design area. We've got a little bit
Mhm.
of a new workflow for creating content in WordPress. I mean, we've seen this design before. We've got like the black panel down the left-hand side, but things have changed considerably. Do you want to just let us know what's going on?
Oh gosh, yeah, I can jump right into that. So to start, there is work being done to introduce content editing. And so if you were part of the outreach program way back in the day before WordPress 5.9, you would have known that there was a level of content editing in the site editor before. But this actually is aiming to introduce that and introduce it with restriction. So you can see when you're editing the template, you can see when you're editing the content. This is going through that pages section now. And it's actually demoing some live pull requests. So this is not like a Figma prototype. This is actually pulling together a couple different pull requests and showing off what's possible. And so you'll see here, this is what the content editing might look like, where you're editing the about us, the page title, selecting a featured image. But as you're doing so, you can see there's that edit template. And if you click on anything that's in the template, it'll actually switch you over and kind of give you a little notification. So there's some good friction there, which is a
Yeah.
big thing of feedback that we've seen. I've actually been itching. The PR that's been working on this is not merged yet. And I had been waiting to test it with the outreach program. So just a little shout out to the FSC outreach program where you can test some of the things that we'll be talking about today. This one is not yet ready, but it's very exciting. And this is the command center that the name is TBD. We're actually having a huge discussion in GitHub about the name, but the command center, which we'll get into a bit
Yeah, we can
later,
get into that.
allows you to jump around.
So in this interface, I think I'm right. For the first
Mhm.
time, you're able to create. Well, you're able to edit, amend pages plus templates all in the same interface. So, how are you coping with that? Because to me, that feels like quite a nice thing, but also it's quite possible that you will miss what you're doing and you'll actually be in the template. as opposed to the page, and you'll get confused and you'll update the template and I mean, it's easy to fix, right? But the fact that they're all basically identical to look at is
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, it is, and it touches on a problem that so I work for Automattic, which also obviously runs WordPress.com, and so something we hear a lot from WordPress.com, and that's one of the feedback sources that I'll sometimes tap into, is around people adding homepage content to their template, and then that being shared across everywhere that template's used. So not understanding the distinction between the two. So this actually aims to help that problem by kind of demarcating clearly where the post content is versus where the template is. I do think it also allows you to build your site out pretty extensively without ever leaving the site editor, which is pretty cool. So part of this is also looking into, if you were to add a new page in this experience, how you can incorporate patterns and make it easier to have a new page set up as well. And just kind of have a more visual way to kind of see all the pieces of your site, all within the site editor. Now, are we getting rid of WP admin posts and pages? No, that will still
Right.
exist, and so there is some duplication, um, and which I think is necessary right now. Alongside the pages stuff, there's also work being done to add a navigation section. So right now, there's a lot of work that I also want to test around showing off the different menus. And this was actually pulled in 6.2, which was another post from yours truly, talking about why we made that decision to remove that. I just tend to announce all the fun stuff right now. So we had to make that decision to remove it because it just wasn't it was only showing one menu. The functionality wasn't quite there, and there was a lot of confusion around which menu was being shown. And now with this release, we've learned from that and are now trying to polish it so it'll show both multiple menus if you have multiple menus, and then also if there's a single menu, being able to just see it and actually visually move it around, which also is another big point of feedback around navigation experience.
Let me just slide
There's
to a bit.
also,
Oh, sorry.
oh
You
yeah,
you
slide
carry on. No,
forward.
no, no. Please, you carry on.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention, so we have like this new pages section. We also have a new navigation section that has a similar look, and then there's styles, and then the styles just basically, I don't think it actually shows it in
No, it's
this
not on
video.
this video. We can show that on another one in a minute, can't we? Yeah.
Yeah, we can show it on another one. But as you can see, it's basically taking the 6.2 experience of this like dark gray sidebar, which a lot of people call like the site view. And then if you're editing the template, it's like the edit view. So this site view and the design section goes from having basically a couple different items to having a lot. So you'll see like design, you'll see navigation, you'll see pages, you'll see templates. And then there's going to be a new thing that actually just landed at 15.9 called library. And that's part of pulling in template parts and reusable blocks and potentially in the future patterns. So that concept of a library also harkens to phase 3, which is thinking about having a kind of a library of items. So you can kind of see little connection points between this release and potentially what's to come in the future. That's a lot of stuff, as you said.
Yeah, a really large amount. We'll sort of try to pick it out. I think using this
Mhm.
video is actually quite helpful to me. But I'm just wondering, with
Yeah.
this pages interface, we can obviously see. So we've got this black sidebar, which is becoming like the
Mhm.
new normal, and we've got pages here, so we can see that we're editing pages, and there they are on this site. Look, we've got like
Mhm.
8 or 9 or something like that. I'm just wondering on sites whether we've got like 150 pages, how that might look.
So it shows the top 10.
Okay,
And then if you want to do more right now, if you click manage all pages, currently it pops you back to WP admin
got
in the
it.
pages section, which is a little bit jarring, but in the
Right.
future, there'll be like a list view of that. I will say one of the things to note about this is you'll see the page, it says welcome, it says front page, and then blog, it says post page. One of the things that's also been done that is kind of hard to understand right now is like the post page template dynamic, like where you're having these like dynamic pages. So like the 404 page is technically a template. So like understanding kind of
Right.
how that works and how those relationships work, and then also like understanding when you've set what you've set as your homepage and where that is. And so those were the little icon changes that
Yeah,
you
so
can
are these
see.
little icons here indicative of that? So this
Hmm.
has like I don't it looks like a header and a sidebar,
Hmm.
and the same thing here for 404. So 404 search, but these are pages. They've got the same icon: about, team, manifesto,
Yeah,
and then we've got your two standard WordPress
homepage and
homepage and welcome. they stand apart as slightly different. I'm just wondering if I was to, do you know, is the future, is the intention to make this interface the interface for editing? So you said, if you want to go to manage all pages, you can go back to the old WP admin, and then from there you'd click on edit. Is the intention for that ultimately to end up back here? If you edit, it'll always end up in a UI like this.
I do think there's an issue that Matthias opened a while ago called like pathfinding that I'm
Right.
increasingly like thinking about, and pathfinding meaning like imagine you go to the categories section in WP admin, and you click to edit a category. Like, is there a way that we could also connect that to the site editor, right? And like edit the category template, for example. Like right now, those things are completely separate. I think there will be a future where there'll need to be different pathways in, as well as like isolated experiences. So that's one thing that I find really interesting with the site editor is we've done a lot to unify and then also have distinct interfaces. So things like the isolated template part editing mode, it's like where you're just looking at the template part and just editing the template part. Like there's a need for both. I do think we will see more pathways in, and maybe it's like we keep WP admin in the pages section, but then the template that the page is using is a bit more surfaced, and maybe there's a nice connection point between the two as you're switching between them. I'm not really sure yet. I think that's to be determined.
No, yeah, it kind of feels like one UI, the best one UI would be the ultimate, but obviously that's a difficult place to
Mhm.
get to. So we can edit these things. I'm just going to sort of slide around. Here we go. So if you
Yeah.
were, for example, to click on the About page, this is what you're going to be looking at, and you can see there's some little detail on the left.
Hmm.
I'm guessing this was for the featured image, but I'm not entirely sure
Yes,
what
that's
this little
correct.
panel is
Hmm.
for. You can obviously edit the title and so on, and then here's the interface for that. It's fairly minimal. You've got the usual array
Hmm.
of things that you can do, but you're missing quite a few of the bits in that interface. And then we step out into this one. This is more familiar, but you can also in this exact same interface edit the template, and the only indication that you've got that you're doing that at the moment, I think, is the breadcrumb trail at the top. So you can see that you've come from About Us. It's governed by this template. So if you fiddle with this template and save it, your About Us page and all the other pages that might be attached to this template are going to be updated as well. But I'm just wondering how easy that is to mess up.
There's a notification too, but yeah, I'm with you. I want to test this as soon as possible. I think we need to get some like real world feedback and get people in it, and figure out if it actually is enough. I also think that point you mentioned at the very end of like, and any other page that's using this template, that is a key thing. And like something that I'm hearing more and more about is like, um, let's take a simple example. Someone wants to update their header across the
Right,
entire
right,
site.
right, right,
Which template part do you pick?
right.
How do you know which header template part is used across all the templates? Do you have to manually, and that's one of the things right now is a lot of times people, especially if they're creating a brand new one, they then have to manually make sure to insert it into each template. And it's like that shouldn't be the case. There should be a way for us to streamline that. And so that's one of the things that
Yeah.
I'm thinking about too.
Well, I'm guessing that somebody like you or somebody like me is fairly familiar that there's a template which is bound to a variety of things, but it isn't sort of showing there, is it? And I guess a novice might think, okay, this is the template for that page. I'm going to modify it here, and the About Us page will be changed. So I'm going to make the image nice and wide as they do in this example, and then go back and look at another page and be like, oh gosh, it did that.
Oh, whoops. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Whoops. Very
Yep.
polite.
So
Yeah.
I think we need to communicate that. Like potentially it's when you're saving, potentially it's when you're switching in. I don't know how we can surface it. It may be something for 6.4.
Right.
So even though 6.3 is putting a wrap on phase two and is aiming to put a wrap on phase two, I think work will for sure continue to polish its experience in 6.4.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's a
Okay.
great call out.
Yeah, it's nice. I do like this interface. I'm just sort of keen to get my hands on it and see what it is. I want to find that command
Yeah.
center bit again.
Oh,
See if
it's
I
at the
can.
very end, I
Was it
think.
right at the end? Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So
there we
this
go.
is another very big thing. Anne mentioned that we don't know what
Hmm.
the name is going to be, but it's if I don't know what the equivalent is on a PC on a Windows machine, but on the Mac we have this thing called Spotlight, which is built into Mac OS,
Hmm.
but also there's commercial rivals like Alfred and things like that, which allow
Hmm.
you to do. You hit a keyboard shortcut, and all of a sudden you've just got everything on the Mac available to you. And I guess the enterprise here is the same thing. You hit a keyboard shortcut, you get this tiny little modal, which is text. You start to type. And as you begin to type, all of the different permutations of what that could be start to come out. So
Mm-hmm.
in this case, you can see that WELCO has led us to, okay, you've got a page called welcome, but presumably if you typed in, I don't know, new, it would give you options for new
Mm-hmm.
post, new page, new whatever. And then you can get to where you're trying to go quickly. Is this a serious, is this, is this something which the team are
Yeah.
serious about, do you think? Or is this just like we're trying it
Yeah.
out?
I think it's pretty serious. There's actually, I think it's a great extensibility point. I actually included it as a point of discussion in like a post about AI because it could be, you could imagine a plugin extending this and having like a little prompt conversation in something like this. I don't know if yeah, I was gonna say, I think there's a video. This is like a good one. There's actually a call for feedback right now from Riyadh, who created this feature, to kind of get feedback on how the feature's landing, what people would want to see, what they think of it, how they might use it. There's also, I will drop, let's see, I'll drop to you, Nathan, in the private chat.
Okay.
There's actually like a GitHub issue on like contextual commands. So things like open styles or add custom CSS or open style book or clear customizations. There's a lot of interesting work being done to kind of get this implemented. And I personally like deeply encourage folks to give feedback on it. I have found it to be wonderful to use. I also have noticed that like the saving interface keeps up. I do think the key is going to be getting the icons right and making it clear what you can and can't do where you
Yeah.
are. So making sure it kind of adapts depending upon what location you're in. Because I think otherwise it does switch you immediately over. So like there's no like double click to confirm. So like it would be kind of odd to be like, there's no way to be like, go back. Because
Oh, I
once you switch
see. Yeah,
between, you know
yeah,
what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
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 So I had one situation where I was like, and then I was like, oh, whoops. Like, where was I? Like, I forgot where I was. Like I didn't have a sense of like the history. And so I think there might be, actually meant to open an issue about that of like somehow being able to see like search history almost or something. I don't know if Spotlight has that, but
So what I'm seeing is, so on the video. Sorry if you're listening to this, but if you're
yeah.
watching it, you're seeing a video, and so for example, somebody typed in footer, and the template for the footer came up, and somebody's
Mhm.
typing in single, and the same thing pops up. Is that doing a full page refresh, or is there something a bit funky going on where you can't just click back in the browser? If
I don't know if you could click
yeah,
back in the browser. I
okay,
actually don't know. You probably could. I imagine you could because I think it is a full page change. Yeah.
yeah.
So you're probably right. You probably could just hit the back arrow a bunch and hope you don't lose changes.
I think this is great. Personally, this
Yeah,
is
it's
for
amazing.
me, this is the most exciting thing. I know that's a bit sad,
100%.
isn't it? But this is a real revolution. In the honestly, like 10 years ago, I was using Drupal for my sins. Actually, I
Hmm.
really enjoyed using Drupal. And this was a module that you could get for Drupal, and I had it on every Drupal site, and it was just brilliant. It allowed me to
Mm.
navigate. And it's not going to save you like hours of time, but it'll save you a little bit here and a little bit there. And obviously, once you get into the swing of things like we're typing in now, oh, that's handled under post meta, then you're sort of off to the races.
Hmm.
So yeah, I highly encourage everybody to
I think it's really cool, and I would
yeah,
give feedback on it, especially if you're like looking to extend it or if that gets your attention. I think I'm definitely hoping it makes it into 6.3 because I do think when you think about having a cohesive experience and some of the stuff that we're talking about right now of like um, the gaps that still exist and the ways they exist, I think this helps bridge it really nicely. It's kind of like adding list view. It's just another tool in the toolbox to kind of navigate the complexity with a little bit more ease.
yeah, yeah. Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so. And
Yeah.
presumably, it's toggle on offable. So those that don't wish to be anywhere near it can switch it off.
Hmm.
There is actually, I keep mentioning it. Ross Wintle, who's a UK-based developer,
Hmm.
he's got a Chrome extension called Turbo Admin, which does something similar to this. And because it's a Chrome extension, it finds that you're on the WordPress admin of any WordPress site. You don't need to install it
Hmm.
as a plugin on each site, and it's really nice. So if you're after
I feel like I talked to them. There was someone I talked to who had built something like this,
yeah,
and I reached out to them and I was like, "You gotta like, can you comment on this with your experience because you've built something so similar?" I wonder if it
yeah,
was him.
yeah, it's
Um,
very good, and it's just kind of fun that it's a Chrome extension. so that you don't have to install it. It just detects that you're on,
That's very cool.
/wp-admin, and now it invokes itself, and it's great, and it hides away notices that you don't want as well, which is kind of nice. Anyway, right, the next thing that I wanted to talk about, that maybe there's a video to show here, I don't know, I don't think there is the navigation block. And I've got to say, Anne, I think navigation is the one thing at the minute which is keeping me thoroughly away from putting both feet into full site editing or site editing.
Tell me why.
It's that it just doesn't yet do what a load of themes that I'm used to from the olden days can do. Like simple styling options, all of that, and it has limited capabilities for things like, if you're on a mobile, what the fly out modal pop-up would look like. There's just less features, basically. So more or less every developer that I speak to, and they're talking about creating a block of some kind, I say, make a navigation block. Please make a brilliant navigation block. And and I just feel that's a big missing piece, because it's one of the few bits that every single site needs is navigation, and it feels like the navigation in core at the moment is totally functional, and it works, and it's definitely got a lot better in the last release, hasn't it, with the the way that you can do things in the sidebar and so on. But I still think there's a way to go, so hopefully this will solve some of it. So what's up here?
Yeah, it'll solve some of it, but I will say some of the styling stuff, this release has had an interesting dance of needing to go back and kind of go through the technical underpinnings. So a lot of like the stuff that we've talked about are like, being able to edit the navigation menu when it's mobile only, like those kinds of things, you actually have to go back and deal with the technical infrastructure. So one of the things on here, and one of the main tasks, is like nav block use slug to reference navigation menu. And that seems really technical and boring, but actually it allows you to do things like, you'll know if you reference it as a slug rather than like an ID number, you can know which menu is like in the header. So you're able to reference it and actually pull it up intelligently. Does that make sense? So like there's some interesting work being done there that will greatly improve the base experience without a user having to do anything or to know. So it's a very hidden behind the scenes change that has like a cascading impact in terms of the user experience, which I think is pretty exciting. And then of course there's always improvements to the fallback mechanism. So fallback being like, what do we show first when someone's starting something new or like creating a new site, because you don't want to have these like empty states basically. And then a lot of work frankly is being done around the link UI, which I was going to say, I think Rich
This is great. This post gives me a real insight into what's going on. I love visual stuff. I can easily understand that post, much less so that post. But this is really nice. So talk us through this. This is great.
Yeah. So one of the things is like when you're using the navigation block, you're using the same link control that you would use across any sort of when you're adding a link in WordPress. So because of that, we have to think about how to actually kind of curate the experience and kind of tailor what can be shown in the different links. And so Rich is kind of taking a step back and looking at these different experiences, including what it looks like to create a page, edit the link, edit the text, have it open in a new tab. Like there's all these sorts of different things to figure out in different situations. So this is looking at the link control element basically and trying to improve it across the board in all the different use cases, but also specifically to improve the navigation block experience, because adding links right now can be a pain. And that's obviously the main thing you're doing with the navigation block.
Yeah, you have to have some insight at this point, don't you, into what it is that you want? Because this bit here, I don't remember seeing this before. Does it come up with like pre-populated? It could be this
does
page.
come up.
Does it? I can't remember that. Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is, I can't remember what the logic is. I think it's like most recently edited. Yeah, it's like I think it's most recently edited. But the problem is, let's say you have 100 pages, you're going to be searching a bunch of stuff and then having it. So I had someone describe to me how he kept having to go back and look at his pages, find the page title he wanted, go back to navigation block and search that exact page title. Like it was a huge pain in the butt. And there's a bug actually right now around if you're adding like creating a new page and going through that experience, if you just start typing, sometimes the typing doesn't keep up and it'll cut off. If you're typing inspiration, it'll do like inspira and then it'll just die. So there's a bug there that needs to be fixed. But all of this is part of just the link control. And it seems weird for the navigation block to be focusing on this, but it actually is critical to how it
Oh
functions
yeah,
and
yeah,
a lot
completely.
of the
Yeah.
user experience.
Yeah, it feels
Mm-hmm.
like to me this list could be unimaginably long, but that really wouldn't bother me so long as it fit. Because I'm always on the desktop when I'm editing.
Yeah.
I'm not really
Mm-hmm.
doing any of this stuff on a phone or a tablet. So I wouldn't care if this had like 50 links in it, so long as I could see them in the viewport and I could just scroll
Mm-hmm.
through them. I'd be happy. But I realize that would consume a lot of resources and probably be a little bit
Yeah.
overkill for
Yeah.
most people.
Mm-hmm.
But what else have we got? We've got this. This
So
is
this
just
is the navigation. You'll see this is like, how do we think about this in terms of navigation links? So it gets really complex when you're going through different flows. Whether you're creating a new page, whether you're adding a custom link, whether you're adding a page link, like a lot of this stuff. And then you think about it, if you take it even further step back, it's like, do you want to prioritize adding custom links or page links to the navigation block? So this gets very like technical right now, but the result is an improved UX. So the stuff, if you're looking at it, you're like, where are my styling options? Where's this? And it's like not necessarily there. Another thing being worked on with the navigation block is improving some theme JSON support. Including things like being able to style the home link differently, like having different icons and having
oh,
different
okay.
options to
Yeah.
style that. So there's some like minor, but like pretty powerful quality of life improvements. And that's where some of the polish comes into. Like part of the theme of this release in my mind is creating cohesiveness and then adding polish a bit. So it's taking the base experience of like building up, that dark gray sidebar, having the different blocks, but then it's like, let's add some level of polish and interconnectedness and cohesiveness between all of it.
The purpose of this show really is to just highlight these things, and then it's your job to go and find the links in the show notes, and go and examine them in more detail. Because obviously we can't really show this in any great
Yeah.
detail. We're limited in time, but also limited in what we can actually fit on the screen.
Yeah, there's a
But I
lot.
will link. I will definitely link this because it's an important part. This is a GitHub page, and then we've got media as well.
Mhm.
There's a whole load of all the different stuff,
Yeah,
but
there's
you
so many
contribute to
things to
that
think
conversation.
about. Hmm.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, the next thing I think we were going to talk about is patterns. Lots and
Yes.
lots of nice new curated patterns. If I'm understanding it, that's the job, right? Is curated, pre-made, ready to go patterns built by somebody else that you can just see and put in your
Hmm.
website, right?
Yeah, so part of what's being done for this release is actually kind of upgrading and adding new patterns to the pattern directory and creating kind of a curated featured section. And then there's also some work being done to explore having wireframe patterns, which is something folks have long
Oh,
talked about. So there might be some interesting split between like curated versus community patterns and then like wireframes in each or something like that. So people can have that experience of like, I'm trying to just have like a blank layout and I just want a layout that looks like this. Cool. Core provided it. I just add this in. It has 3 columns and looks like a testimonial. Perfect. And it's not very opinionated. Whereas other work is being done to have like more opinionated patterns. And so and part of this is to allow for things like when you're adding a new page, having creation flows that prioritizes patterns. And there's also some work being done potentially around like, which I'm like on the fence about whether we'll see what progresses or what we can possibly get in. It would be awesome even to get in like the bare basics of it, but around improving the WP pattern block, which is a very technical thing, but it allows for things like um, full sync of a pattern and partial sync of a pattern and then like an unsynced pattern. So it can have like this spectrum of like patterns as they are today, all the way to something that's more like a reusable block. And then an
right.
in-between state, which is like you want the design to stay in sync, but you want the content to change. So maybe you have like a call to action design and you want it to be the same across your entire site, but each call to action is different. So you could have this pattern that you've made that's partially synced up and you can make design changes maybe to like the background color or whatever, the button. But then the content will stay locked and like it can be totally separate when you're in each section. So like, on the about page, you have a call to action that's like contact us. On the contact us page, it's like request a invoice or something, whatever it might be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they're having different, but the design is exactly the same. So there's work being done technically to unlock that, which I think is really cool for agencies and enterprise folks. It's more maybe a power user kind of feature. but that is also super technical. How do you keep the sync states in place? What method do you use? How do you save the data? How do you make sure the data stays in sync? Like, how does the saving
Yeah.
work? Kind of goes down a rabbit hole, but
I
there's
feel that
also. Mhm.
I just feel this is these core curated patterns. I just think this is such a nice enterprise because the difficulty
Mhm.
in learning how to pull these designs off is not inconsiderable to somebody new to
Yeah.
WordPress, and understanding how to group things and which blocks to surround with what so that the layout works and doesn't break and it is mobile responsive and all that. And these are great, like little learning resources as much as anything else. You can just drop these into a site and then go figure how it was actually built. Look at all of the, look in the inspector and see how many things you've
Mhm.
got lined up and how it was all built. So I think just from a tutorial point of view, it will be really useful to have.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I do think there is a need to have a strong set of curated patterns too. Rich and I are actually kind of tag teaming on that a little bit, and trying to get like a plethora of like a lot, like imagine like 100 or 200
Yeah, yeah.
new patterns coming in.
He's
So we'll
definitely got the
see.
chops for that, hasn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he can do it in
Mhm.
his sleep. Okay, so that's going to be a whole load of curated patterns coming very soon. The next
Mhm.
thing that we've got here is the style book inside the style section. Let me see if I can find that. There was a video somewhere. Was it this one?
It
Where
should
we
be
can
a
invoke.
link.
Was it this video? That isn't even a video, is it? Here we.
No, I
This is
think,
the one I was
yeah, I was like
talking about.
here.
Let me
Mhm.
just play through this. It's about 30 seconds, and you can talk through what's going on here and what's changed. So we've got
Yeah, so basically this is showing the style section. You'll see right now that there's style variations that are emphasized. So similar to when you're in the style section when you're editing a template, um, you can basically switch to different styles here, and then you can turn on the style book and also see the style book with the style variations, which is pretty neat. And
how's the
this just
style book gone
mimics.
down? Do you find that people are using it? Because I mean, in theory, it's a really great idea, isn't it? You can see on one canvas everything
Mhm.
that may occur on your site, but because it's disconnected from what is on your site, I wondered what the usage was like if it's being widely
I think the
used.
usage is high once people connect the dots between, like, another
Ah,
thing that people don't realize is there's like deep linking. So not
yep.
only if you open up the styles interface, you turn on style book and then you click on like quote, it'll open up the quote settings for styles. So like I think there is some like neat. Uh, I mainly think of like block themers as using this, but I also have like once people kind of realize that that's what you can do, um, I think it is used quite a fair amount. I encourage people to use it when they're first setting up their site, and then, but honestly, after that, actually, I will tell you one of my. I actually have an issue open because I feel actually pretty strongly about this around the what I've learned with the outreach program. People don't switch style variations this much. Like people don't have a standalone site and then they're opening styles and just being like da, 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 da. Like that is not the average use case. Like maybe when you're onboarding someone.
Yeah, it's the
So I'm
first.
actually a
It's
bit
like the first
concerned about
run,
that.
isn't it? It's the first pass on a website build. Figure out which one you
Yeah.
need and then stay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I could
Sorry,
see
I
this really
interrupted.
freaking people out where it's like they open up the style section of the site editor and this is surfaced as like the top priority thing. So I have an issue open in GitHub kind of discussing like what else can we surface? How can we surface things that are maybe more commonly used? Um, like potentially if there's like a fonts manager, maybe something like that can go in there. Like I don't know, but I am worried about it being this emphasized because I don't think it's a common action. I think it's switching between style variations can almost, especially right now, there are some bugs, or maybe, yeah, there are some bugs that, like, let's say, for example, you have the canary style variation on, which is what's on right now, and you add some custom CSS to it and you customize it, and then you're like, that looks okay, but let me switch to like a different one, and you switch to a different one. It'll fully reset your
Oh,
CSS.
I see. Okay.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. Not great. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's not cool. Like, you know what I'm saying? And like we have, part of this release, which we can get into, is like revisions for styles, so that helps. But yeah, it's something I worry about where like maybe yeah, you can use revisions, but um, how likely is it that someone's gonna know to go do that? So I think as a base experience, which would be style variation has a couple bugs that concern me. I don't think we should be emphasizing it as an action as much. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
under
we'll see.
discussion.
But I think it's kind of an interesting UI. You've got the style section with all of the different
Hmm.
possibilities listed on the left, with the tiny little eye icon indicating where the style book is going to be living. Yeah, interesting. Yeah,
I think
it
it's. I think it's good.
does feel like a one-time pass, doesn't it? So you mentioned the ability to do revisions for, let me get this right,
Mhm.
templates, template parts, styles, and so on. I think we might have a video. Was it that one?
Yes.
Let's go through this, and you can explain what's
Yes.
going on.
Yeah, so this is showing basically a timeline of style changes. Um, this is a crappy video from yours truly. And then you can kind of change. I know I had to do my own video for this one. But yeah, it's pretty neat. The only thing that I've seen feedback on is that sometimes it's hard to tell if the changes is really subtle or if it's not visualized on the screen itself that you're looking at. It's
Right. So
hard
if
to
the
know.
button's not there, you wouldn't have seen that button change. The big dramatic green to blue everywhere is obvious to see, but yeah, okay, got it. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I'm a bit, yeah, I'm a bit like not concerned about, but it's interesting, right? So like imagine if some of these style changes also impacted like a template that you're not looking at. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, how would you know? So like revisions are great because you can switch back and forth between the two, and they are very visual, but that's something to kind of figure out and consider. And to, I think whenever you're hitting apply, maybe there's a way to say like these are the changes impacting across these different things, or
Yeah,
getting a bit more
or
information.
yeah, or even just I'm just talking of hot air really, but the ability to add a note,
Mhm.
to say what you did at that moment, altered button padding or something like that, and,
Yeah,
something
and this ties
something.
into, like, right now, like, the multi-entity save, which is just the save in the site editor, doesn't have a lot of information about style changes, and this has been a long-standing issue, is, like, how much information you could show, and so I think it's all connected to that, where it's, like, in theory, you could click on one of the timeline items and actually see something a bit more because it's inherently visual and you're not seeing the changes. I think we do need to expose a bit more information, but what that information is and all that sort of stuff, um, TBD. And it's also honestly just great to have this exposed at all. Like I think that alone is a huge enhancement, and then we can like refine it a bit more.
It's another Post by Anne, 22nd of
I
May.
know.
It'll be.
Furiously
You are
typing at all
prodigious,
times.
Anne. There's just no stopping
I
you.
know, I
You
know.
sleep with the keyboard, sort of typing as you doze.
Uh,
22nd of May. I'll link to it in the show notes. I think the last thing that we wanted to preview was
it should be on this one.
was the preview block theme using the site editor. Is it this one? I don't suppose there's a video for this. Maybe there is. Yes. No.
Oh no, this is the issue I was talking about of like lowering the emphasis on style variations. If you go back to the smoothing out the post you were just on the quarter, yeah, if you scroll down, yeah,
Oh,
so
got it.
this, yeah,
This
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Right.
And
Thank you. Missed that.
mhm.
Okay, let me make it big and then click play. Come on, Mac. There we go. Right, talk us through this then.
Yeah, so this I actually was in person working on this with some folks, which is really cool, and a lot. It came together a lot faster. So it's using right now you can't preview block themes, and it's basically allowing you to preview block themes using the site editor, which I love. I think it's a very cool way to get someone into like knowing it's a new experience, knowing it's a different experience, getting a taste of the site editor, um, and then making customizations. So you can make same with like if you're using the customizer, you can go around and make a bunch of different changes, and then when you're ready, you can just hit activate and save, and switch your site over. And once you hit activate and save, you're just basically left within the site editor. You can see this is very much just like feature, like it's like boom, this works, but maybe we need to add some like onboarding. Maybe we need
Yeah.
to add something like if it's a child theme. So like that's one of the things we actually just tested in the outreach program, and a number of items of feedback came up, which was great. So like for example, previewing 2023 design looks really janky. Like how can we very quickly design wise show that you're previewing and then show like the theme a bit separated out. But it's very exciting. This has been a long-standing pain point in the block theme experience is people being unable to preview. So that alone, I'm stoked about. I think it'll help a lot with adoption. I think it'll help a lot with people like getting a taste of things.
Yeah, you may have
And
missed
then if
that
they don't want to switch.
right at the beginning of the video for about a quarter of a second. We
Mm-hmm.
were in the old admin, which we haven't seen once
Yeah.
at all during, which
Mm-hmm.
now looks a bit weird actually. Now that I look
Yep.
at it,
Yeah.
and you go to a theme and you click preview, customize, you know, what have you, and so that's what's happening here. There's a button hidden below the timeline of the video there, which allows you to hop in. So familiar old
Mm-hmm.
interface, and here you are having a fiddle and looking at what your block theme can do and seeing what the different options are. That's great.
That's really cool. I mean, another thing we need to add in is like being able to, so like in the, with classic themes, when you're using the customizer to preview a classic theme, you can then switch between different themes from within the customizer experience. And so like that's another thing to consider is like, how could you preview other block themes? I do think we need to add some kind of, maybe it's like a welcome guide that's very brief. That's like, hey, not like a warning, but like, hey, this is a block theme. You're using the site editor to preview this. Like, go forth.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
um,
yeah. There's always work to do, Anne.
there's always work. Let me tell you. I know.
This
People
much
are like,
we
why
know.
haven't you done this? And I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
we're doing so much. I'm like,
yeah. It is a work in progress. I know that you are on a very strict time, so I am going to just call it a day there. Hopefully we'll do this again. We'll have a bit more time to
yeah,
get into the weeds of it. But Anne, thank you so much. I really appreciate joining us
yeah.
today, giving us a quick whistle stop tour of WordPress 6.3 and what might, caveat emptor, what might
And
be in it.
we didn't even get to some of the stuff like
I
the
know.
fonts
There's
API
yeah
potentially,
for
all the
another show.
interactivity API. Yeah,
For
we'll have to
another
jump
show.
in again before maybe like 6.3 beta 1 or something. I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
like June
Well, you
27th.
know me, I'm always here. And
Yeah,
I'll
I know.
I will see you. I'll see you in Europe, hopefully, in a few days'
Yes.
time. But for now, Anne, fully appreciate it. Thanks so much.